This video is going to cover what is called passive and active transport, and I will give a brief overview. There's some good material in the outline of the PowerPoint, and you get to do some exercises in the lesson that cover all these things. So diffusion. Now, what this means is cells rely on what are called movements across cell membranes to either acquire nutrients, water, or produce something on the inside of a cell and release it to the outside of a cell. So these are laws, they're established. So diffusion. Now, like I said, you do have access to a lesson here. And there are questions based on this, and this picture is actually perfect. And it's the same one that's in the PowerPoint here. So diffusion, what that means is called the law of diffusion. Particles that are highly congested, they're going to collide more, and they're going to move to areas where there's less collisions, lower particles. So diffusion by definition is movement of particles from high concentration to low concentration. Microbes that are growing on Petri plates where there's a high nutrient level, the reason they grow so well on those plates is agar is a great medium. It's loaded with nutrients, and by diffusion they can acquire iron and things they need for a growth cycle much easier than if they're spread out on tables or different areas where there is no nutrients, and therefore they can't form colonies, blah blah. So cells rely on diffusion. In human beings, this is how oxygen gets from the lungs down the blood. Oxygen in the lungs is very high. Blood going through the lungs is blue in color, low in oxygen, and oxygen diffuses across the alveoli into the blood. So diffusion is a very important movement. It is passive. It's based on random motion of molecules. So the next one, osmosis. Got a few more details with this. It is called the diffusion of water molecules. Osmosis by definition means movement of particles from high water molecule concentration to low water molecule concentration. I love simple diagrams. This is a great example of osmosis. If you understand this diagram, you'll understand everything. Here are salt particles, and you see the salt particles are on this side as well. Let's just pretend between here, this could be a cell membrane or some kind of semi-permeable membrane. And you can definitely tell in these two examples of water, there's less salt over here, there's more over here. So basically there would be more water molecules on this side, they're taking up all this space, compared to this side that has more salt particles or solutes. So there's less space for the water molecules. So here's osmosis. Water molecules are always going to diffuse where there's less water molecule concentration. Or the other way to look at it, this water here, this side, this example, has what is called a low osmotic pressure. What that means is there's less solids, more water molecules. This side over here has what's called a high osmotic pressure. Particles in great numbers create what's called high osmotic pressure. It's a pulling force. And so water, same example, water is always going to move from low osmotic pressure to high osmotic pressure. So it's really two ways you can look at that. Yeah, low solute. And when you're talking about fluids in chemistry, solvents are fluids. Solutes are particles that are dissolved within a solvent, or in this case water. Salt would be a solute. So just remember, water always follows the solids, always. Now this was an example in a micro book, and you can use it for a lot of different things. We are talking about microbiology, and here's that example, and then here's the same one. So basically, here are the scenarios that you would do. This is an example, okay, hypotonic, isotonic, and hypertonic. This is called tonicity. It's talking about the fluid around a cell. Once again, you have great definitions for this. A hypertonic solution is a solution with a higher concentration of solutes than other solutions. For example, going back to this picture, this is a hypertonic solution. See all the solids? This over here, when compared to this is called a hypotonic solution. There's less solids than on this side. Or you could even say body fluids. If you had the same amount of salt particles on each side, that'd be an isotonic type of situation. So on our let me go down here. So here we go. So an isotonic solution, it's a solution that has the same concentration as solutes or solids as the cell that it's sitting in. So if you place a cell in an isotonic solution, nothing's going to happen. And you can see here, equal amounts of water would be diffusing across the membrane. Iso means same. There'd be no change. This is showing a plant cell. So, and in fact, plants are square. You know, plants must have water to produce food, energy. So, let's take a hypotonic solution. Let's try to go in the order of our outline. Or hypertonic solution with high concentration of solutes. Those cause cells to shrink in this case. Why? Because you place a cell in a hypertonic solution, by definition that's a solution with a higher concentration of solutes. Well, water is going to be drawn to the higher concentration of solutes. It's going to be that example right there. Water inside the cell would be moving toward the outside. So they cause cells to shrink, hypertonic solution. Case of a plant cell, you don't want that either. It's going to kill a plant cell. Plasmolyzed means that the plasma membrane is pulled away from the cell wall. It'll kill it. So plants, obviously plants that are trying to grow in dry environments die. Everybody knows that. Hypotonic solutions, they have a lower concentration of solids than the cell inside. Now remember, water moves from areas of high water molecule concentration to low water molecule concentration. So in this case, water is going to move inside the cell fairly rapidly and in large amounts. And a lot of times, if you're talking about a human cell, they'll burst. Plant cells thrive on that. That's why, and even microbes would burst, but plant cells thrive on that. See, they require water. I'll just say this, things that are freeze-dried, very dry areas, that's why they are resistant to food spoilage. Microbes cause food to spoil. So anything that's got a lot of solids in it draws the water out of the cells and it kills the cell. That's why things with lots of sugar and salt, they last longer, foods, that is. Okay, active transport is a process that involves, now, before I move on, diffusion and osmosis both do not require energy. They're based on random motion of molecules. Active transport does require energy. It's going to require the cell to expend cellular energy. So here is a passive transport. See, here's high concentration to low concentration. That would be diffusion. Or it could, if those were water molecules, you do the same thing. Here's active transport. You have, see the 2 here and the higher concentration here. So you're basically going against the concentration gradient. It's like you're going uphill. So that does require energy. And when cells produce something on the inside of a cell, it requires energy to release them to the outside of a cell. Exocytosis means a process where a cell releases something to the outside. Endocytosis is when a cell brings a solid or liquid across the cell membrane to the inside of a cell. That requires energy. White blood cells that eat other cells, that's a form of endocytosis that requires energy. And I will start there next.